Mr. Nepo Baby. That's what they called me. Openly. To my face. In Southern Ontario, it can take years to get a full-time contract as a teacher. Sort of like tenure. Unless you have connections. I didn't have connections. I had the connection. My father was the director of education for the district school board of Bridal Veil Lake. His title is more significant than you might know. Directors are the ultimate authority of all schools. Teachers, staff, and students in their territory. Only the Ministry of Education has more power, and they rarely meddle in individual districts, because it can be politically risky and rarely worth the effort. So, did I get my job straight out of teachers' college? Because of my dad? Yeah. But that didn't make me a bad teacher. In fact, for a new teacher, I thought I was pretty good. But, obviously pretty good wouldn't cut it for my colleagues, who had to work and sacrifice for their hard-earned positions. To shirk the stink of favoritism, I had to be the best. I had to prove that my hiring had been about more than surnames. They needed to know that giving me a contract had been smart, logical, necessary, a very wise decision. You get the picture. I had to be better than every other teacher in the building. That brings us to Eric, the mystery boy. Eric had been placed in a special needs program. An appropriate decision, considering he didn't speak a word and hardly moved. He'd arrive on the bus in his wheelchair, and be pushed by an educational assistant to his classroom, where he'd remain, more or less staring at the clock or at nothing. He'd be assisted for scheduled bathroom breaks and be spoon-fed his liquid, vitamin-infused lunch. A few months into the year, and Eric had made no progress. I knew because I overheard the special ed teacher, Miss Zuzian, the first to call me Mr. Nepo Baby, talking about it to the vice principal. I didn't know Eric at the time. He wasn't in my class. I taught English. But how perfect would it be to succeed where my biggest critic had given up? I spoke to the VP after Zuzian left. He would have given me anything because of my dad. So, he agreed to arrange with the principal, and my father, to reduce my regular teaching periods to only one class. The rest of the day would be devoted to Eric. Let me tell you, this change did nothing to improve my status with the staff. They saw it, with good reason, as a reduction of duties for questionable reasons. And they were right. I was gambling. I should have done my job and not sought out more special treatment. That might have earned their eventual respect. Naivety is my only excuse. Miss Zuzian, an elderly woman with broad shoulders and bowed legs, scowled when I entered her room in early November, and then proceeded to ignore my presence entirely. I sat beside Eric for the first time, nervous and intimidated. Despite his wheelchair-bound existence, he appeared strong, almost muscular except for the protruding stomach he might have borrowed from a beer enthusiast. His dark hair and even darker eyes seemed immune to the clinical track lighting, cheaply illuminating the windowless room. I mean to describe, I suppose, how he had little presence until one looked at him directly and saw the shadows under his eyes, and the aura of gloom he projected at all times. I'm doing a poor job of describing him, I know. The best I can do, perhaps, is to say he didn't stand out until noticed. And even then, he mostly represented an existential crisis. What kind of life could he have? Did he enjoy anything? Did he know where he was? I had no answers. And that made me profoundly sad. Every person matters. Everyone deserves to be seen because every experience they have is valid and important. I've always believed that. It's the only way our existence has any meaning. How else can anyone believe in the value of a murdered infant's brief life? There has to be a reason God allows it. And if there's no God, well, then what the hell is all this? Hello, Eric. He didn't move. He didn't blink. And I ran out of ideas. Rather swiftly, I began to panic. I'd made a huge mistake. I had no special training. I had no qualifications. This was all going to go sideways fast. And then Zuzian and the others would be right. I didn't deserve to be a teacher. I left the room and had a minor meltdown in the smelly bathroom that doubled as a custodial storage. After some tears and several face splashes, I stared at the pathetic wreck in the mirror. I'd gotten myself into this mess. And if I gave up now, I'd never live it down. My father, a proud man, would be disappointed. I went to the guidance department and to the rows of steel filing cabinets containing every student's OSRs. An Ontario student record is basically a simple folder containing information about a kid's educational and sometimes personal history. All teachers had access, but few ever bothered to have a look. Troubled students often had very large folders, filled with incidents of violence, issues at home, and exactly none of these things could be fixed by an educator, whose job remained limited officially to imparting knowledge and improving specific skills. Assume trauma or abuse, my teacher's college professor taught. When they struggle to focus or complete an assignment, to know all is to forgive all. Kids want to do well. When they don't, the reason is probably more than the urge to be a jerk. I liked that professor, but his lesson didn't exactly apply to Eric. He wasn't being a jerk, and I didn't know if he wanted to do well. I needed information. OSRs are ordered alphabetically, and I found his file quickly. It slid too easily from the rest, because there was nothing in there. The file had been purged completely. Parents and administrators are allowed to take pages out of the files. Technically, only stuff considered irrelevant to a student's education can be removed. Expelling everything, according to my dad, who is exactly who I went to next. Can you blame me? Well, don't answer that. Is weird, and usually means there's something to hide. A family secret, abuse, or, at the very least, an attempt to erase all evidence of prior low performance. Some parents, my dad explained over the phone, I think their kid will do better if no one knows their history. They have a fair point. I could picture him in his huge office on top of the super fancy board building. Seriously, it has its own waterfall. Teachers who read OSRs might use it to confirm their suspicions regarding behavior or poor academic performance. If they read it prior to the student entering the class, which is very rare too, they might develop a bias toward the student. I know, Dad. Why do you think... I heard his chair creak as he probably leaned forward. And I immediately shut up because I feared my tone crossed the line. With my father, or my boss, or both. Hold on. Eric arrived from Quebec last year. He was born in Ontario. Spent every prior year to the last here. That means... His dad hms and huh? Killed me. What? What does it mean, Dad? There should be a copy of his OSR in the Quebec board he was in. Can you get it? Dad sighed heavily. It's a remote board. Far north. Dad, I need this. They don't think I deserve the job. His prolonged silence fell across my neck like a hangman's noose. Dad? Please. I can probably get it, but listen. I heard him get up. I heard his door close. This isn't entirely legal unless we get consent from the guardian. Or the student. Not likely, right? I mean, the parents probably purged the file, and the student doesn't talk. Yeah. He sounded impatient. I'm gonna hang up now. I'll see you later. I'll stop by. Your mom made some food. She wanted you to have some of it. As he said, Dad hung up, and I had the remainder of the school day to think about what had transpired. His attempt at being secretive during the call didn't make much sense. He talked like we were being recorded. If we were, then our conversation would land him in the trouble he implied we'd get into. I doubted the food story would provide the plausible deniability I thought he wanted to maintain. Whatever. He arrived at my townhouse at 8 o'clock in the evening, with a loaf of store-bought bread, and a thick file underneath. I accepted the file, and he abruptly left without saying anything, adjusting his Blue Jays ball cap, as if it were a fedora, over his brow. Did he think he'd entered a noir film? I shook my head. Transferring the copy of the OSR is, in fact, illegal without consent. However, I highly doubted he'd spend any time in jail for it. In any case, I took it inside, sat on the couch, munched on a slice of brown bread, and began to consume the file. Eric Labar, born in Bridal Veil Lake, 2009. He was older than I thought. His elementary school experience was rather normal. Samples of his artwork and writing were normal, except for the odd thing here and there. He painted a fish driving a car, all in blue paint. Not exactly worthy of the file, in my opinion. Nothing noteworthy at all until age 7, where a hastily handwritten report mentions the fact that he'd moved several times across the country and around the province. No explanation is given. The next page cited a litany of therapies and therapists. Eric had been in treatment and missed a lot of school, but there was no explanation as to why at this point. Another note indicates that none of the specialists he sees are able to help him speak. A few record, however, that he is fully capable of feeding himself and toileting if not provided an attendant. That last part paused the bread chewing all right. Eric had many educational assistants that helped him with everything. If he didn't have them on hand, would he be more self-sufficient? I read on, but stowed this idea in the vaguest approximation of a plan. On the last page of the OSR, a yellow paper, torn from a pad, listed strategies, but without explanation or even a signature. These suggestions are as follows. Number 1. Eric abhors scrutiny. Remove unnecessary eyes and helpers, or he will shut down. Number 2. Eric enjoys solitude in a unique form. He likes to be away from people and places where people have been. Number 3. Eric can do a form of automatic writing/drawing, though do not expect words/images he produces to be cogent. The writing instrument should be placed in his hand, and he should only be given durable paper like cardstock or something similar. Number 4. Eric will speak when totally confident. Ensure he's confident by following the previous 3 strategies. Below all of these simple ideas, there's a blackened swath of permanent marker. It's as if someone wrote something large, in a different hand, but someone else thought better of it and covered it up. No matter, I thought. I had something with which to proceed in the seemingly hopeless task of assisting the abandoned student in order to help myself. Are you out of your mind? Zuzian accused in the hallway, directly outside the open door of her classroom. I'm sure I swallowed nervously. Not at all. And no offense, but this is a new strategy from Teachers College. And how long have you been teaching? It was low. A classic attack in teaching. To suggest older, more experienced teachers had somehow become outdated because they hadn't read the latest textbooks in education. It's a trash thing to do to anyone. And yet, somehow, a staple of the profession. Zuzian raised her index finger and thought better of saying a word. Instead, she crossed her arms and smiled. She knew I had the backing of the administration because of my dad. Going against me would be pointless, and potentially harmful to the remainder of her career. Better to let the newbie try a shiny new pedagogy and fail spectacularly. The EAs left with the other students, and didn't complain about the disruption of their routine. My father was their boss too, after all. Zuzian stayed and changed nothing, presenting a lesson on hand washing and hygiene. She gasped, however, about 10 minutes in, because Eric stood up. Eric? He stared at her for a second before heading for the open door and the hallway. I followed. Zuzian, too. One of the EAs happened to be on the way back to the class. She stopped dead, and did a double take of the boy she'd never seen walk before. He paid her no attention, and proceeded not to the special needs bathroom, but the boys' washroom used by all students. None of us could follow him in there. The union advised teachers, regardless of gender, from entering any spaces where privacy should be expected. Another kid left the bathroom and saw us staring at the door, which made him hesitate. Nathan, Zuzian barked. Did you see a big kid in there? Dark hair? He nodded slowly. What's he doing? She demanded to know. And Nathan appeared nervous, as if he'd been caught without the answer to something he should know. Nathan? Zuzian got too close in his space, and the boy backed into the wall beside the door, which opened, elevating the thunderous flush of all public education plumbing, and revealing Eric, drying his hands with a paper towel. With the attention off of him, Nathan scurried away. Eric weaved around us, and back to the classroom as we closely followed behind. He sat back down in his wheelchair, and resumed staring. Zuzian and I lingered in the doorway. She caught what I can only assume to be a very satisfied expression on my face. How did you know? I smirked, and decided that humility might further my cause to be accepted. Just beginner's luck, I guess. The older teacher smiled and patted my shoulder. I really can't believe it. You got any other new strategies? A brief panic until I realized there had been more things to try in the OSR. A few. For the very first time, I got invited to lunch in the staff room, where I'd been sharply rebuffed socially by the other teachers. They had ignored my clumsy attempts at an introduction. We know who you are, Mr. Holland, gray and a year from retirement, said a little too loudly. He had no fear of my dad. When teachers are this close to the end of their career, they become what's known as bulletproof, meaning they'd be long gone before any dismissal proceedings could begin against them. Unless a criminal offense is involved, it's very hard to fire a teacher in Ontario. The grim expressions they all wore hadn't changed since my first visit. But Zuzian held my shoulders and marched me to the head of the table. Enough with the dagger eyes, she said. Have we got a story to tell you? Despite the collective pronoun, I let her tell it, which she did with favorable embellishments, mostly involving her astonishment at the sight of Eric walking for the first time, which couldn't actually be true. If he'd been truly bound to the wheelchair 24/7, then his muscles would be too atrophied and weak to stand. Since that clearly wasn't the case, I could only assume he walked at home regularly, maybe even worked out, judging by the general fitness of his body. Fairly quickly, Zuzian managed to erase the general scowling in the room. Some seemed impressed. Others were doubtful, which was fine. Let them process today and watch as I perform another miracle tomorrow. I went home and read over the faded yellow sheet again. On the second day, I made sure Eric had no helpers for toileting and for lunch. Zuzian and I watched as he ate alone in the empty classroom. The vice principal came by to offer kudos and to see Eric's progress. I used the opportunity to suggest removing the wheelchair the next time Eric used the bathroom. Boy, did I know how to make people nervous. He didn't say yes or no, and sort of trailed off about a meeting or something. "Let's do it," Zuzian whispered. Her excitement could hardly be contained, and I felt a little guilty. The way she felt came from the genuine joy of helping one of her students. I'd only seen Eric as a means for my own advancement, which was definitely unethical. I needed to alter my perception of the situation. I didn't want to only be seen as a good teacher. The original goal had been all about being really great at this. To help people. I couldn't lose sight of that. And so we did. We took away the wheelchair, and when he returned from the bathroom, he made no comment and sat in a chair instead. At the end of the day, Eric walked to the bus. We followed at a distance and watched as the driver tried to stop him from boarding. Hey, no," he said, stepping in front of the large boy. "This isn't your bus." Eric placed his right hand on the left shoulder of the driver and firmly pushed him aside. The driver didn't fall or anything. He simply had to take a few steps to stay on his feet. Yet he quickly lost his temper and reached for Eric as he boarded the bus. Eric turned before the driver's touch could land, and something in the boy's eyes made the man freeze. We intervened then, explaining the miraculous progress Eric had made in the last few days. The driver apologized for not recognizing the boy. "He's always been in a wheelchair," he explained, like we didn't know. "I'm sorry." We laughed. It seemed like the best day ever. And the driver soon began smiling too, as he hopped behind the wheel and drove off. "Can't wait to see what you come up with tomorrow, kid." Zuzian bounced her fist off the top of my shoulder. Again, dread emerged. Inexplicable, and wrongly attributed to the prospect of Eric continuing to progress. Of course the Yellow Page had more ideas, and everything tried had worked. So, what could be causing these ill feelings? I had trouble sleeping that night. Ice rain gently wrapped the bedroom window. Schools would be closed if it kept going until dawn. That would be good. Why would that be good? Because then I could relax, take a break, and there I went again, making everything about me. Eric had shown incredible achievements given his previous non-existent expectations. I should be hoping for clear skies. Yet it continued to rain, and I couldn't suppress the relief. I stayed in pajamas and ate a tombstone-sized bag of Doritos from Costco. I'd say it made me feel sick, but I'd been feeling like crap all day. No TV distractions or video games seemed to help. I called my dad. "Enjoying the snow day?" he asked. "If you can call it that," I said. He heard the dour tone. "What's wrong? Are you okay? You stayed home, right?" Wow. He could always instantly make me feel like a child again. "Yes, Dad, I'm home. I don't feel good. Too many Doritos." He laughed. "You always eat your stress. So what's up? I've been hearing good things through the grapevine." No grapevine existed. He had spies. The principals had likely been told to report to him regarding his precious son. It irritated me, but wasn't new. He'd been the director for a long time. Special treatment and outright espionage had been a big part of my educational experience. Not until high school did I realize most kids don't have influential parents steering the course of their life. That's about when I decided I wanted to become a teacher. A's came easy to me. Too easy. How many had actually been earned? Self-doubt gnawed away at self-worth. "Hello?" he asked, to fill the extended silence. "Just called to see if you stayed home," I said. "Of course," he answered. "Do you want to talk to Mom?" "No, I think I'll go to bed. Didn't sleep well last night." "Too many spoons under your pillow?" He chuckled. "Something like that. See you, Dad." "See ya, son." I ended the call. Why did I want to talk to him anyway? Same reason as always, I guess. He could fix things. And the whole Eric situation seemed like a problem I couldn't express. So, could Dad fix it? What needed to be fixed? What the hell had I missed? The terrible feeling persisted. I didn't sleep well and became annoyed by the wind hissing through the large tree in the backyard. Usually soothing, but not tonight. Tired, foggy, I put the cardstock paper in front of Eric the next morning. I curled his fingers around a primary printer pencil, and he began to write. He didn't look at the page. He looked up at the clinical track lights depressing us all. As the yellow paper said, gibberish came from Eric's hand. Doom, desolation, tears, counter-demonstration, mourning grief. His frantic handwriting tore across the cardstock wildly. Uncontrollable destruction, bereavements, lamentationally. With the pressure he exerted, he would have torn through ordinary paper and snapped a thinner writing instrument. Over-industrializations, agony, uncontrollable destruction, lamentationally, interresponsibilities. Sweat began to pour down Eric's forehead. Zuzian and I shared expressions of growing concern. Uncaringness, lamentationally, mischaracterizationness. Apparently finished, he slammed his fist holding the pencil on the page and began to moan between heavy breaths. "Eric, are you..." Again, he pounded the desk. Zuzian zipped into the hallway. "Eric, My words triggered another explosive blow that sent a tremor across the surface of the desk. The cardstock stuck to his perspiring hand for a moment, before gliding to the floor under his chair. A hairline fracture had been made by the boy. He continued to moan and breathe, and then, to my shock, Eric looked up at me, dark eyes glittering, on the verge of tears. "Eric?" He bashed the desk again, harder, widening the fracture. "I'm sorry, I don't..." The next blow flipped a fragment into the air and over my shoulder. I stayed silent. He continued to stare. An accusation? A warning? Who could say? The educational assistants flooded the room, with Zuzian and the principal close behind. He flicked his index and middle fingers together. "Come here," the gesture meant, and yet it seemed perverted. I'd only met Principal Yellen at the interview. He never seemed to leave his office much. But when he did, well, the staff reported an odor accompanying him. Some mixture of sweat and something else I can't bring myself to write down at the moment. I think you'll understand. What does a weirdo pervert do alone in his office all day? Even as an outsider, I'd heard the gossip. He had us sit in his 70s-era space. Zuzian pinched her nostrils shut. She didn't care if he saw. For his part, he only seemed amused. What a piece of shit. "I'm sure you're both aware," Yellen said, savoring an uncomfortable pause of his own making, "why you're here." I looked to Zuzian. She looked at me. "No," I eventually answered. "That boy broke a desk with his bare hand," Yellen said, His eyes widened as he shook his head and rubbed his palms together. He seemed both intrigued and excited. I know you must be in some shock at the moment. The man licked his lips twice, like nothing could be more normal. I know you're probably thinking you're in trouble. He shrugged. But that's not the case. Not the case. Zeus and I both flinched when he raised his voice unexpectedly. I'm so very impressed, he went on. It's practically unheard of for educators to make such miraculous progress with such a student. You might want to stop. You think you should stop. But please, no. You can't. Don't you see? Neither of us were clear on if he wanted an answer. You're his only chance, Yellen said. Don't give up. The meeting ended there, with another gesture. All 4 fingers waving vaguely towards the door. I had questions. Zeus had better survival instincts. She pulled my arm. That man, she said, when we reached the relative safety of the hallway, smells awful. She looked so serious. I began to laugh. We continued laughing until we reached the classroom. The broken desk had been removed, and Eric had regressed to staring. I found the cardstock with his furied writing, and tucked it into my backpack for later consideration. I was tempted to let him ride out the day, as he usually did. He'd been violent, shocking, but we'd never get anywhere if I took a break every time he did something different. The difference was the point. I thought of the last strategy on the yellow page. Eric will speak when totally confident. Ensure his confidence by following the previous 3 strategies. The only things we hadn't tried were removing all scrutiny and putting him somewhere no one else had been. I couldn't imagine, however, a place in the school where no one had been, or how Eric would even know if people had been there. Plus, if someone guided him to such a paradoxical location, then it would have, by definition, been visited by at least one person. Zeus sensed something was up. You look constipated. What are you thinking about? I could have told her about the illegal copy of the OSR. I should have trusted her, and relied on her experience. But I feared the retraction of her acceptance, if she knew I'd had a cheat sheet all this time. I'd lied to her about the strategies, and purposely tried to undermine her as a teacher. She could never know. Okay, everyone, I said. We're all going to leave. Confusion rippled through the educators present. You mean, leave him alone? An EA asked. I nodded. Yes. The 2 educational assistants looked to Zuzian. For her part, she appeared wary. I don't know. No students left unsupervised. The rules about it are pretty clear. Teachers have been fired for not following it. I understand, I said, which is why I'll accept all responsibility should something happen. Hope you know what you're doing, kid, Zeus said as she walked by, closely followed by the EAs. I didn't know how much time I'd have. I raced into the hallway and silently beckoned the others to quickly follow me. All 4 of us jogged to the vice principal's office. He abruptly ended a phone conversation without saying a word, and appeared horrified by the intrusion. No time to explain, I told him. I need access to the cameras. Move, please. I had enacted my plan like the idiot I surely am. I could have set things up. I could have, should have, tried to contact the parent guardian for consent first. I could have shared what I wanted to do. Then the poor VP wouldn't be scurrying to obey like a whipped peasant. Maybe someone would have stopped me. Maybe no one would have died. Through the multiple panels on the screen, we watched Eric leave the classroom and wander towards the boys' bathrooms again. Kid, Zuzian whispered, what's the plan here? Too stupid to answer the valid concern I'd yet to ascertain, I held up an index finger, indicating arrogantly, undeservedly, that she should wait a minute. He moved beyond the boys' bathroom doorway, and we lost sight of him for the first time. Where'd he go? Where? I guess the VP thought I was asking him, because he quickly straightened up and said, "There's a small blind spot near the custodian's office. He should appear... There, look, the math hallway." Sure enough, Eric's large frame trudged along, and we could only see his back and the ponderous way he moved with his arms cradled in front of his stomach. Zuzian tugged at my sleeve. "I don't think this is a good idea." And the immense flaw in my plan still hadn't occurred to me. So I continued to watch and didn't respond. "He's going to the science hallway," the VP offered, sounding like a child in need of a cookie. There, I cried. "He's gone into one of the doors." Only then did I understand how the idea of letting him find an unoccupied space not visited by people made no sense. Any spot visible by security cameras had been visited by people. All the places in the school had been made by people. That strategy on the yellow paper made no goddamn sense. "What's that door?" Zeus asked the VP. He hesitated, struggling for an answer. What is it?" I demanded. He visibly cowered. "It's not a classroom. Storage, maybe?" "Wait, there he is," Zeus shouted. "What's he holding? Looks like a..." Eric held a container and seemed to struggle with the lid. He wore a bandana or a cloth across the lower half of his face, and safety goggles over his eyes. He lurched quickly around the next corner, and up a set of stairs. No mistaking the next door he opened. It had been the only one where I begged the inhabitants for acceptance. Always a few teachers in there. Colleagues building one another up. Complaining. Gossiping. Eric tossed the plastic bin haphazardly into the teacher's lounge, and swiftly closed the door, which he then leaned his back against. Even in poor, pixelated quality, we saw the handle turn, and the impacts of attempted escape fail against the large boy. They could not get out. "Oh," I think I said. "Oh no. No." Or something like that. I'm not entirely clear on what happened next. Everyone seemed to move at super speed, except Eric and I. I watched the screen. I watched Eric as he held the door. And then I watched him resist the attempts to remove him from blockading the door. Both Zuzian and the vice principal tugged on his arms, while one educational assistant talked on a cell phone. All soon began to react to what Eric had done. They coughed and the VP swooned. All had to retreat from the chlorine gas, which Eric had mixed in the bin he tossed into the teacher's lounge. Eric stayed put, and the teachers inside, 4 in fact, perished in horrible pain. I couldn't hear their screams. They would have been terrible. The chlorine gas, banned in 1925 by the Geneva Protocol, would have left them entirely conscious for the most part, while they essentially drowned from the inside, lungs filling with a pink, frothy liquid from destructed tissues. Police eventually arrived. Eric didn't resist. Why would he? He'd accomplished his goal. They took him away. The same authorities came to question me about the 4 murdered teachers. All of the veterans. 2 on the verge of retirement. I didn't know what to say. I admit to wanting my dad to sort it out. During the questioning, Yellen appeared, and explained or created the lack of evidence. "Unfortunately, our security system did not record the incident. It happens sometimes. Low-budget technology often fails. I remember his overemphasized smile, and how it made the constables recoil. He's one of our most difficult students. Yellen placed his hand on my shoulder, and I resisted the urge to shudder. He's made immense progress lately, because of our young teacher here. So tragic. Such a tragedy. Yellen's creepiness effectively pulled all suspicion away from me. Unless you counted the looks I got from Zuzian and the other staff. She never spoke to me again. She was Zeus no more. Naturally, I got transferred to another school for half a semester. And when that didn't work out, Dad ensured I got some bullshit consultant position, where I read educational articles and shared watered-down, useless interpretations that earned yawns and eye-rolling from actual teachers that pierced me to the core. By summer break, I could stand no more, and begged Dad to return to the classroom. He'd been shaken, obviously, by the ordeal, but reluctantly agreed on one condition. I must share every last detail of what transpired in those crucial days. I did. He listened. "A coded message," he said, stirring tea that had long gone cold. "Do you have it?" "The what?" I asked. "What?" "You said he wrote a weird message," Dad said. "Could be a code." I think I rolled my eyes, thinking he wanted to play spy again. "Let me see it." I don't know how he knew I'd collected it. Saved it from the classroom floor. I found my backpack and the cardstock. He stared at it for a few minutes before asking for a pencil. "Why? What do you..." He glared above the rim of his glasses, his trademark expression for impatience. I fetched a fistful of pencils for him. He set to work, counting and writing. I wanted to ask, but didn't dare interrupt. Beneath the first word, doom, he wrote the letter D, then O, under desolation tears. A T followed for counter-demonstration, an H for mourning, an E for grief. Uncontrollable destruction was and is a Y, of course. Bereavements, lamentationally, over-industrializations, and agony spells love. Uncontrollable destruction, lamentationally, irresponsibilities, that's you. And the last few words only lacked the correct punctuation mark. Uncaringness, lamentationally, for the second time, and mischaracterizationness. Now. It hadn't been the words themselves, the gibberish, but the number of letters and what they came to in the 26 letters of the alphabet. Each word stood for a letter. The lengthy list spelled a short message, a question. My father finished the message. He didn't need to read it out. I had already started sobbing after the third word. But he did. "Do they love you now?" He looked at me like I should know. "What does he mean by this?" How could I explain? I sat down and wept, while my father went into the kitchen and dumped out his tea, before setting down the mug hard in the bottom of the sink. "I don't know what you're so upset about," he called from the other room. "You tried for that boy, didn't you? No one else did." No one should have. I didn't have the courage to say it. "That boy is crazy," he went on. "His foster mom told the police she had to lock him in his room to stop him from hurting the other children. There were more than a dozen in there. A couple were scamming the system with the help of their friends' addresses. Awful stuff. The police never would have found out if not for you and your..." He stopped talking when he noticed I'd entered the kitchen. 4 people are dead. He knew where to find bleach. He found the hydrochloric acid with ease. My father huffed. Not sure what you're trying to say. Get out. The silence that followed deepened after the soft click of the closing front door. He'd gone without argument, and only this question in passing. I trust you'll destroy the OSR? I could have hit him. Maybe he sensed the anger potentially fueling violence, and that's why he left so swiftly. I drank. A lot. And found the file in question. The OSR copy. I should destroy to avoid legal prosecution. I came to the yellow paper, and the 4 strategies which had killed so many people. My eyes lingered on the great black hole covering some portion below the evidence. Only then did it occur to me that such a permanent marker void had been done with intention. Some mass redaction to hide the truth. I wished I could uncover the barrier and know what it said. Or at least who had done it. But I didn't know how. Like Eric, it said nothing. Would be nothing. Until everyone looked away. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.